So thank you all for being here. I promise that it won't be boring. I believe it's a little bit because it's cozy here, right? Chairs are comfortable, it's a little bit cold, so yeah. But I promise you guys that you probably learn something new today, okay? My name is Elias Nogueira. I work as a principal software engineer. I'm living here actually, but I'm from Brazil. And I give a lot of contributors for the community itself. I'm one of the Java Magazine Netherlands editor. So if you guys would like to write an article to Java Magazine, you can ask me or any other person from any jug. So we can make it happen. We can help you to write this article, okay? So it's really nice. It's a really fun experience. And imagine nowadays everything is digital, but there's still a magazine. You still can show your mom, oh, in magazine, you know? Like, oh, really proud of me, yeah. So, what I'm going to talk about today, about managing test data. And I will show you, of course, some slides to give you some concept about the problem you want to solve. And I will show you some code. And I will write some code because sometimes only slides is boring, right? We need to see it working. And everything, the slides and the projects you have offline, I will show you later the link. Cool? I will stop in the middle of the presentation, some milestones, to ask if you have a question. Instead of asking questions in the end, you guys can ask questions at any time. If you guys have a question at any time, actually, you can guys just, okay, Elias, I have a question, shout out. Cool? Is anyone sleeping already? No. Yeah, nice. So, I will show this in a really specific problem because managing data itself, it's a huge topic, right? We had one talk during this morning about how to generate like data with AI, but I will just focus on one aspect here, more for the development of it. And the problem we want to solve, one of them, is every time we use data, we need to troubleshoot because when we really need data, we need data for some tests, to do something, and it fails. And when it fails, I need to look at the logs. When I look at the logs, I can see something like this. It's hard to understand, right? There's no meaning on this data. Even though it's valid, it can be valid, there's no meaning. What I'm seeing here, so it's really, really confusing. This is one of the first, is the first problem actually. You cannot understand the data. And one of the best approach to start tracing it and debugging it and understanding is through data, right? Because the first thing you ask, okay, what is the data set that needs to use and see the flow? Second item is not prioritized data requirements. So in the same log, I can see age as 1. Is it right? Is it wrong? Don't know. Maybe if the system is from a hospital, it makes sense, right? Age 1, so it's a newborn. But I don't know, it's a vote system, doesn't make sense at all. Only for edge case, probably. So I need to set a lot of priorities. I need to, prioritize the data requirements in order to understand which rules I have to determine the happy path and the edge cases, because I need to play with both, right? But I need to know exactly the data I can use. The last problem for now is, okay, let's try to improve it. So I have an object, I need to create some data for that object. But if you don't create any pattern for that, you end up with something like this. Maybe in the first run, when you're running a test, this data is valid, but it's still like test user, surname, test, email, test address, something. But in the second run, it might fail, right? So I'm not creating any pattern, any approach, and this can create a lot of code duplications because you might think, okay, I will create one person to create with valid data and another one with invalid data. It's still a copy paste, it's still a lot of duplications, and again, there's no pattern. Cool? Can you guys identify with that? We do this all the time, right? I was doing this as well. So, just summarize, 3 main problems: hard troubleshooting, not prioritized data, and no patterns. So probably we need to fix all the time and create some code, but there's no pattern. How we can solve it? in 4 super easy steps. First one is to define a way to generate the data, so we are creating an approach. Second, we must use a specialized tool for the job. Instead of hard encoding data, we need to have a tool that can create that kind of data based on our conditions. 31, understand these data requirements so I can easily create different edge cases or different hack paths or different things for the data generation. And the last one, it's crucial. You guys use the unit testing tools all the time, the libraries for that, but it's really important to understand the support of those tools for the data requirements. Like JUnit or TestNG, for example, in Java, they do have specific features for data, and it's really important to understand that. We are going through all the 4 steps, okay? So the first one, define a way to generate the data. There's a lot of ways to generate, and here we have 4 main articles for that. And if you guys start reading the titles of the articles, there are 2 aspects here. There's 2 main keywords that shows all the time in the title. Test data and object model. And they are patents created. Object model came from Martin Fowler. He created this definition about, okay, we need to have a way to determine data based on some requirements and generate it. But nowadays, a lot of people are calling it test data in general. So those 4 articles, more or less, shows to you this, the common approaches. First one, in order to have an approach to generate data, I need to use the build pattern, okay? Normally applied in a model object, because when I need to generate data, I have a model object with all the attributes, and okay, I know that attributes, name, address, email, etc. I need to fill in. Second one is the factory design pattern. 31 is most of the time the missing point, the tool to generate that data. If I combine those 3 items, I'm calling here test data factory because it's using the factory pattern. I have the data through the tools using an object. Cool? Easy? Awake? Yeah, as well? Yeah? You can make some noise just... See? Yeah, cool. So first one, super easy. I don't recommend you guys to use Lombok, but just for educational purpose, I'm using Lombok here because it's easier, because they can show the whole piece of code. But for example, I have this object called simulation with name, this thing, CPF, email, amount, installments, insurance. And I'm using the builder annotation, which will create a builder for me, okay? And I will show how to use it, of course, if you guys don't know. So I have the simulation.builder, and I can fluently set the values for all the attributes. CPF, name, email, etc. Cool? It's the first step to fill in the object with data, right? It's a normal thing. I can use by sets, or I can use through builder. Through builder is a little bit more fluent. It's easier. After, it's super easy implementation of factory here, but I have a factory class with a static method, and I will name this method like create simulation, and I will fill in with data. Perfect, right? Awesome. So all the time that I need to create a simulation, I need to call simulation data factory dot create simulation, and I have a full simulation object with that data filled in. But there's a problem here. The data is still fixed, but we'll talk about this later. Okay? So let's try to implement this and just show to you how bad it is in terms of code. I will do exactly what we have there. But I will just create any test class. Actually, I have the model here already. Okay, so I have the same model that I was showing with all the attributes annotated with builder. So what I'm going to do right now, I have the factory, but I will create a new factory from scratch. I scratch my factory just to be different from the previous one I have. And normally it's the final countdown. You guys remember this, right? No, only the old ones. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So, public, static, simulation. Where is the simulation? Simulation. Cool. So, create simulation. And I can easily return simulation builder.build. And here I can get ID, no, but name, I will just fill in with something here. And CPF, and email, and installments, let me fill in with 2. And whoops, amount, new big decimal, I don't know, 2, just to do something. And installments, oops, not in the big decimal, but installments, 2. And so like Elias, something, elias.com, etc. So I have everything here, right? So let me just, cool. I have exactly what we had on the slides. And now I can use this my factory to generate the data for me. And just to create a silly test, but my test, nope. So void my test, and annotate it. It's not a test itself, but I would just run that class. My factory dot create a simulation, but of course I can put it in a variable and I can print out. Cool, easy, right? And I will run it. Error, what's error? What? It's all the time during the demo, right? Why? It's not compatible. It is compatible, but because I'm Java version. Oops, Java version. Which version? I'm using 21 here. Yeah. And why is not happening? Because in my Maven module, probably there's something that is using 17, but no. And compile, of course.
Your project SDK is misconfigured.
My project structure is what? Right?
Your project SDK is misconfigured. You need to go to the settings.
Project as well. I skip. No, let's just compile to see one thing. Compile. Yeah. So IntelliJ. Not check updates. Fuck. So settings. No settings. It's the project structure. Yay! Right? But where is it? File. Project structure. Thank you. 21. Thank you so much. Ta-da. Now, yeah. And I want, yeah. So you can hear, like, can see here, Elias, blah, 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 right? Perfect. But if I create another object, of course, you guys will know that. With the next simulation, it will be exactly the same data, right? All the time, over and over again. And this is a problem. It's a huge problem. You guys know that, but it's just to show you, okay, yeah, it works like that. We have one missing aspect for the Test Data Factory, which is use a specialized tool for that. And Jaap is a Dutch guy, super nice one. Not because Dutch guys are not nice, because no, he's super nice. Just making a joke. Okay, it wasn't a good one, right? Yeah. Okay. He has a super nice talk about fairies, fakers, and factories, where he's comparing some tools, how to generate data from different tools, and super nice talk. I highly recommend you guys to take a look on that. And he's talking about those 4 tools. He's Random, jFairy, Instancio, and DataFaker. And guys, there's no perfect tool. Actually, there is a perfect tool. The perfect tool is the right tool for your context. If you think that, like, I don't know, jQuery is the best one for your context, you are creating things, it's the best one. Perfect. So you don't need to go strict with some tool because someone is telling you to do it. Okay? But I like a different tool. And one of the best tools for that nowadays is called DataFaker. DataFaker is actually a fork from JavaFaker, because there's some history there, because the guys on JavaFaker wasn't maintaining that properly, from my personal opinion. And a lot of good pull requests, they were not taking a look. And a lot of people in the open source community was pissed off, including me, including other guys. So a group of guys decides to fork the JavaFaker and create DataFaker, and actually doing what the guys there wasn't doing. So listing the community, seeing the pull requests, the good ones, everything, and approving and adopting the tool. And this tool grew really fast. But how is the really nice thing about DataFaker? I can use as a builder. It's called a fluid interface in this case. So I can instantiate the faker object, and I can say, faker, I want a name, and this name should be a full name. I need an IBAN, so finance.IBAN. I need an email address. I need to create an expression. Doesn't matter. And even better, I can define the locale. So for here, it's German. So I'm more or less getting, for IBAN, for sure, it's a German IBAN, right? The name, maybe it's German, maybe it's not. But the thing is, I can even localize the data that I need to generate. But watch out, DataFaker is really nice, but it has a fixed set amount of data, okay, based on YAML files. So if you something really like fine-tune it, JavaFaker can provide this for you through some interface, and can you define your own custom generator, and can still use JavaFaker for that. I will follow only all the things that DataFaker provides you through that not limited, but extensive amount of set of data. But if you guys can extend it at any time, okay? So what I will do, so we have that same object with fixed data. Now, look, I can use that faker dot something, right? I just need to associate, instead of the hard-coded data, in this. So it will look like this. So CPF is just one thing in Brazilian. CPF is the social security number in Brazil. And look, I have a method in JavaFaker for that, for the Brazilian perspective. And they have for different countries as well, which is nice. So I'm giving a full name, an email, an amount, and a generating amount based on a certain restriction, insurance with Boolean, etc. And this is super nice, because every time that I try to run this, it will generate a different set of data. Okay, but okay, is this correct? Let's see. So I need to go to my here, and I will generate only for a few ones, not only to spend that much time, but the first thing I need to do is private faker, new faker. Cool. Let's locale.canada, no, and yeah, Dutch, but it's how it's called in locale.
It doesn't have constant. You need to use off.
I need to use off language and country. So help me. So
NL.
one is language, another is country, right? So NL and no NL and NL. Okay, cool. Thank you. Lowercase the second. Lowercase the second. Perfect. So name, you create an Yan or something like this, like Yap. I don't know. Cas. But faker is static. And not final. What can be final as well? Faker dot name dot full name. CPF, there's no CPF for that, but I will just generate like the email. Faker.internet.email address. The other things I will leave at this, okay? Just to show you the specific parts. And remember, in my test, I have two different objects, and I will call the factory. And now I will have the different set of data. So Lucas is a Dutch name? I don't know. Might be, right? Sila? Not really. Jeremias. Rodolf. No, it's not generating correctly, right? Let's run again. Let's see. Okay, Merv. Merv is Merv of Mivral, right? Mivral, doctor. Okay, it's weird. And Vinesh. Claire. Our locale is not working, right? Probably it's not working, right?
The email domains are.
The domain, yeah, .nl, yeah. But let's say if I do just to see a different thing, like I will do like locale dot Brazil. Isn't here as well. Come on. Korea. This will be fun.
Now we get Dutch names.
So yeah, yeah. Imagine that. So I'm getting something really different. So that might be Korean. Is there any Korean here? No. Okay. So you see, it's generating like based on locale as well. So it's super nice. It didn't work with like Netherlands, so but it's okay. Cool. So far so good. So you could see that with three different things. Let's just come back here a lot. Those three patterns, let's say three approaches. Builder pattern, factory, and a tool. We can now generate anything we want. Yes, go ahead.
If you keep on generating, then how will you assert? Like, then it will always a random name.
Perfect, but yeah, during the test, you need to assert, you need to first generate the object, get the object, do your post, your something with the test, and compare the results with the other objects. Like,
We keep the same object.
yeah, I will show this. I will show this as well. Yeah. So the missing part here. Can you guys see that I have? I will show directly. Data requirements. I'm using a Spring Boot application, super silly one as well. I will run it with all the tests, with all the patterns, and I have this in my entity. I have a min and max value for the amount, and I have a min and max value for installments. So I have some data restrictions, and it's normal to have data restrictions. So I know exactly how to create even my test case, right? Valid test case between those range, invalid the edge cases, -1, +1. It's classic thing like edge cases. Cool? And what I will do, exactly like this in my generator. So faker.number between. And will generate exactly between my data requirements. The same for installments. So I'm not adopting, but I'm using the tool even to generate those data requirements. In the case you guys have a super specific data requirement, you can still extend the main class from DataFaker and DataFaker, and you can do those kind of things. And DataFaker will do this for you. Okay? But let's see this in a more in deep. So this was super silly one. But normally our project is not silly ones. Maybe they are silly, but they are projects. And what if I have an integration test and I need to do all the things that an API does, like testing the get endpoints, get like the testing the all the edge cases like simulation not found by name, creating successfully, sending valid simulations to see if like it's returning the correct stats code for that and correct data, etc., etc., etc. I need to generate a huge amount set of data, but using the factories, let's say, to create a new simulation. And what I have here, the first question of our friend. So I'm using the simulation data factory. Please generate a valid simulation. And I'm getting this object, holding this object. I'm doing my my post request using rest assured, plain rest assured here. I'm not even using Spring Test because I like more rest assured than Spring Test. We can talk about it after the talk if you guys want. And I'm testing in this case. In this case, I'm returning a header, which is the correct way to return something when you do a post, right? It's not a full object. And I'm just concatenating the CPF that through a post, I will have the full path for the get, for that resource, correct? Basic API development, right? Yes, yes. The valid simulation. I have a new simulation, and that new simulation has exactly the same thing. Everything here. The only difference is that I'm logging, because for debugging purpose it's nice to have. And I have everything here as constants. But if I need some edge cases, I have the whole factory, and I can creating something with non-existent name. So I'm just creating a first name and saying, okay, this is a non-existing. But if I need something more different, like simulations less than min amount, and the minimum amount is 1,000. What I do normally, if I really need to work with the edge case, -1 for that. So easy. All the time I have what I'm doing here, actually the approach. I'm creating a valid simulation. I'm changing only the amount for the invalid one, because it's the focus of my test, right? If you guys try to generate a full object that has all the test case, your validation might fail in other things. So I'm really focusing on the data I want to have for the test. That's why I end up with a lot of different methods in this factory, because I really want to fine tune and know I really this data wrong or this data right. Cool?
Why would you use Faker again in the test?
Why
Do you use Faker in the test?
in the test itself?
The constant.
Yeah, I don't need to use in the test because I'm using the instance here somewhere. Yeah, and I'm passing the responsibility for the faker and generating data to the factory, not to the test. So my test use the factory, which will generate the data I want through faker. Yeah, is that was a question or was a different thing?
No.
No? You can ask again. It's okay.
No, never mind.
No? Okay. Or later. If I just try to see, like, I have everything here, like, in the normal way. But what if I need to try the edge cases? Normally, you guys starting creating one test per different edge cases, right? It's good, but it's not good as well. Why is not good? Because you guys end up with a lot of code, right? And more code, more maintenance. That's why we are talking about how to understand and this importance of the data features in your testing tools. Cool. I'm using JUnit 5 here. I hope you guys are using JUnit 5 because it's an awesome tool to use. And JUnit 5 has 5 ways to generate or to use a different set of data. And normally we call this a data-driven approach. If you search in all the tools that does this, it's data-driven something. Cool? And we have like those value source, internal method source, external method source, argument provider, and CSV provider. I will just walk through to that 5 to show the difference without any execution, but I will show you what would be the best way to handle most of the edge cases when you need to do, because only difference for the edge case, what is? One set of data, right? And the expected result. I have two variants, and the whole thing is the same. The issue probably will be the same. The HTTP status for that issue will be the same. So I can just create one test and just iterate the wrong data inside. Cool? So value source is super simple. I need to annotate all the time with this parameterized test, my test, instead of at test. So JUnit knows, okay, this will execute any times based on the data. And value source, super simple. All my data is on the annotation value source. So I have a list of ints, integers, and I have like 7, 10, etc. And this test will run 4 times because I have 4 different set of data in the annotation. Cool? And we'll do this assertion. Easy. And the value source will run with classes or all the primitive objects plus a string. String is a class as well. So, cool? Sometimes it's really nice because if I have one set of like data that is a primitive, a class, or a string, I can use value source. Easy. Internal method source. The difference right now is instead of having all the data in the annotation, I create a method, and JUnit calls it a factory method, and makes sense. And I have a string of arguments, and arguments for JUnit is the object that will carry all those data. And I can have, of course, if I use the method source, but probably I'm using something custom, something with more than one set of data that I need. Value source, only one, all the time. Method source can have an n, can have as much as I can. So if you guys can see, I'm passing 2 arguments, a string and a big decimal, right, with different data. And in my test, you can see in the void method, I have 2 parameters for the test method. Normally it's not allowed, right, because a test method doesn't have any parameter, but if I have a data-driven one, I need to try to associate what I have in my method that carries all the data with the test. And JUnit cannot know for sure what is it, so I need to define the type of the object, of course. But I can name with any name. So I call it string product and big decimal amount. And JUnit will match with those arguments, and it will run many times as I have the arguments there. Cool? Why is it called internal method source? Because it's inside the test class. Okay? And the association of it, I have the notation, method source, and I have the method name. Cool? Nice. What is the difference of external method source? It's an external class. That's it. But the problem is that to associate into my test that set of data, I need to add the full qualified path to my class plus method. And unfortunately, JUnit only accepts this as a string, not through the class name. Because there's only class name you can get from the class, not the methods. Otherwise, you need to do a reflection, so it's getting more over engineering, right? The only drawback of this approach, external, is that you need to put the full qualified class and method. But it works as well. It works really well. And you can have a set of data externally using your data factory and using here. Cool? But one of the best ones for me, at least, is the argument provider. Argument provider, argument provider is actually JUnit works with arguments, this class, right? And he knows how to use that arguments. But if I want to extend or do my implementation of this, I can create a class and implement the argument provider, and I can have the strings of argument, and I can set whatever I want in the external class. And what is the difference for the comparing to the external method source? I have a specific annotation, and I can provide the class name. So it's better than provide the full path, qualified path as a string, right? The problem with this approach is that I need to have one set of data per class. But I can, if you guys are wants to have in the same class, and I did in one open source project, you guys can have an argument provider class. You guys can create nested classes. And through the nested classes, you guys can implement the argument provider, and you guys can use in the argument source, for example, product data argument provider dot the inner class dot class. And you guys have everything in the same class if you want. This is one of the best approaches so far that can lead you to less code and less maintenance. And we have as well the CSV provider that sometimes is super easy to use. Don't need to be a CSV by itself. You guys can even the CSV part, you can, in the annotation, you guys can build the CSV through the string. But the normal thing, you have the CSV source annotation. You guys can point out to a CSV file, and it will load the data from the CSV file. But of course, the columns of the CSV, the commas or the any other chart you have there, should match with the data type you're setting. Here again, I'm setting the string and big decimal, but you guys need to know that, okay, that is a string, that is a big decimal, there's only 2 columns. Cool? And it will load. I don't like that much placing data in CSV files or Excel files, but sometimes we have some legacy systems, right? We need to play with that, and it's a good, super good approach to use for that. Cool? Questions for now?
Can it use URLs as resources?
Full qualified URLs, you can. No, I never tested actually. You can use through file for sure, but it's not what you meant, right? You need HTTP, something, yeah. It's a good question, we'll try to test that. I don't know how to answer. And I will test that. I never tested, so yeah, tested all the things. It's a shame, right? Good question.
Why is it better to have the data outside your test class itself?
Why is good?
Because I have it inside with an object itself with encapsulate everything instead of multiple arguments, same thing.
It's a good question. I can
You need to reuse it, of course.
yeah, I can explain one thing.
Yeah.
Before I can explain for example, I have, this is a lot of tests. No, this is this is my integration test. I have all the tests here, all our test methods for different things. And it has 238 lines, 238. If I add the data here as well, I will end up with
Yeah, well,
1,000.
If this was the data with test, it would just be one block and
Yeah,
the test-driven data itself. So it would be the block of 110 instead of 238,
yeah.
because we'd just put this in these fields, and this would be the result.
Yeah, but you need all the time a methods to fill in as a data-driven inside the class, yeah. So it's kind of separation of responsibility, single responsibility principle, right? I have the factory with all the data, I have the test with the test, and I combine in the Megazord. Yeah, but it's valid, so you can do it as well. You can put everything here in the same test, and it's fine, it's still fine. The problem for me is like, it's a lot of tests here. I would even break down in this in less tests, like test for only gets, test for only posts, etc., and like have the specific responsibilities. Cool. If I, go.
Is the idea to try and have like a factory for all of your objects? So you have a single place where you're going to get all your objects for all of your tests? Because I've tried this sort of approach before, and what typically happens is we end up having one test class with one factory class, and then it just ends up, it just gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah, it will. And professionally, I have the same problem. What we do sometimes, we end up with like one factory per like super specific object. But what we do sometimes is, okay, when I need to do a flow, it's not only a single integration test. We do end-to-end tests through the APIs as well. So let's say the basic thing, I need to buy a product and I have like search the product, fill in my personal data, fill in the payment data, and after that I can finish. Instead of having, like I will have the specialized factories for the customer, for the credit card, etc. But I can create an abstraction on top of that with like, okay, make a payment or buy the product, and I can inside create like 3 different methods. Okay, get for me a customer, a valid customer, generate for me like valid credit card information, and with a valid product or product that is for available for sale, and I can just use that in a fluent way instead of using 3 different classes. I use one filling with data. But it will end up like this will be a little bit hell to manage, because this I have like this integration. I have only 2 endpoints, 2 classes, because 2 different set of specialized data. In a real problem, you end up like with 100 probably, right? Yeah. So I have one integration test here that is super fine, which is this invalid simulations. And if I look at this, I'm setting an invalid simulation object. I'm doing my post, and I'm expecting that is the unprocessable entity. And I have something different here, because if I have this unprocessable entity, I have a key and a message value to match, because I can have different errors for that, different types of issues, right? The amount, the email is not valid, the name is null, etc. Classic things of restrictions we have like in the API.
That's why I asked about, couldn't you condense this into just input invalid simulation and add in the response here is SC unprocessable?
You can, but you end up with only one object. You need more, like you can have like, at least from this example, let me show the example. It's a good question. I have these invalid things, right? And I'm using the argument source here for that.
Arguments for multiple invalid.
Exactly, yeah. I'm using the argument source because I told you guys argument source is one of the best ones, and I want to prove you that is one of the best ones. So I'm going to simulation data provider, and I have here simulation data provider implements arguments provider, blah, blah, blah. And what I have here first, I'm generating the simulation objects, okay, from the factory for each different type of edge case first. So I have simulation, less than min amount, exceeding the amount, min installments, exceeding installments, with not valid mail, and with name empty. All my edge cases for this super silly thing. Now I have the set of data. Now I'm adding to the arguments. Cool. So per test, every test will be a different set of arguments. But now I need one thing. There's the assertion, right? I need to know the expected results. And for each one, I know, of course, because if I have like less than min amount, I know the message, I know the key. What I'm doing here, I have one thing with the key, errors amount greater than, I will show you, it's an enumeration, and the message. And what I did here to be like super like focused on this test, an enum, where I have a key and a message with everything here inside. Good? This connection is okay? So every time that I call errors amount greater dot key, get the key, errors amount, dot message, get this. And when doing the association with the invalid set of data with exactly the expected result I want to. What I need to do now? I have the argument provider, so I have all the arguments with the associated invalid object with the key and message. And now, my test, I need to have the invalid one, which I need to post. So it's exactly like this. When I have the body with the invalid simulation. And I have here string path and string validation message. And in my assertion, I have this, at least the validation message, okay? So I can go through the path is validation message, and I can see if exactly like that. Does this work? Don't know. Run. It failed, but I know exactly why it failed, and it's tricky. Why? No, I don't know why it fails right now, because it's not showing the test, right? So what is here? Constructor, yeah, I know. So I have one failure here. The email must be valid and actual expected, right? From my keys, email must be valid. But somehow I generated a not well formatted email, and Spring is giving me the constraint key as okay. It's not well formatted email, not Spring itself, but Jakarta validation. Let's run again because that's what we do, right? And now, how come? Now I know that I have a flaky test. Yeah, funny. And
my colleagues just ran it again in the build.
yeah,
It works.
but guys, this is on purpose. Why? Remember in the beginning, when we need to troubleshoot, what is the most important thing? Data. So I know exactly that email is not being generated correctly or it's not well formatted, etc. So it makes sense. Got this?
But if the test was green, the first execution, you're gonna run it until it become red.
No, actually, I saw. I just did one normal step that we normally do as a developers, right? It's failing. There's one thing, and let's run again just to see if like it's running or not. It's a normal thing everyone does, right?
Yeah, but imagine if the first time you execute and it is green.
Yeah, but probably next time and next CI will fail, and it's bad. But as you have the data, as you log in the data, as you know exactly the data, you will do the troubleshooting. Oh, okay, the mail is not well formatted, and you can see the mail there. And actually, I didn't show you, but the mail should be. Let's run again. Now we'll pass all the time. So it's tricky. Jesus, you failed, please. Fail. No. When we need it to fail, it's not failing. See? Yay! So it says that email must be valid. And okay, where is the email? Email. Yeah, I have the set of mails, and it was for the mail object, right? So look at here in the message logs. I have all the factories, and at some point the email is not well formatted, and it's this one. See? I can even spot easily the issue right now, generating the data correctly. In this case, it's not correctly. Yeah, it's not correct. Probably it's an issue in DataFaker, right? Yeah.
Depends what you did.
Thankfully, I can explain this to you guys. Cool. Whoops. So now we are mastering how to generate data, how to use JUnit with those things. When you guys access this later, you guys will have some references for the project. Everything I'm showing through the code, you will have it offline. Cool. And before we can go and have some drinks, I have the QR code for the slides and project. I will post on my LinkedIn and Twitter. You guys can follow me as well if you want. And if you guys want to give me an instant feedback, because I know that through the app you guys can give me feedback about the talk. But if you guys want to give me an instant feedback, you just shout out. It's okay. Or you guys can use the QR code. There's only okay. The grade there that's it. Thank you so much for being here till this last talk, for the questions, and I'll be here for the drink with you guys, and we can talk about testing, or we can talk about anything you want. Thank you so much.